They laughed louder than the engines in the showroom, and Ethan Harper could feel it in his bones. Ethan, a quiet mechanic with grease-stained hands and a worn leather jacket, crouched over the sleek black luxury sedan, checking the alignment of the alloy wheels with precision only years of experience could bring. The fluorescent lights above the dealership buzzed faintly, casting a clinical glow over the showroom, and the scent of polished leather mixed with new car paint hung heavy in the air. Around him, a circle of customers and overly confident salespeople whispered, chuckling at his unassuming appearance, his stained coveralls, and the way he methodically worked without a hint of defensiveness. One sales associate leaned over, smirking, "You sure you belong here, buddy? This isn't your neighborhood garage." Ethan didn't reply. His eyes stayed on the rims, his hands steady, tightening each lug nut with careful, deliberate rotations. The quietness of his movements contrasted sharply with the laughter around him, drawing a subtle, almost imperceptible attention from the few customers who glanced curiously instead of mocking. Outside, a soft California breeze rustled through the palm trees lining the lot, sunlight glinting off chrome and glass, while inside, tension built quietly, like the still air before a storm. In the far corner of the showroom, a young woman entered, her heels clicking softly on the polished tile, and Ethan barely registered her presence. Chloe Lancaster moved with an air of calm authority, her gray eyes scanning the room, noting the whispers, the amusement, the subtle hierarchy of confidence and superiority. She paused, taking in Ethan's calm demeanor, the way he worked without flinching or raising his voice, and a faint spark of curiosity crossed her expression. No one knew the story behind the grease on his hands or the quiet strength in his posture. To them, he was just another man out of place, someone meant to be a punchline in their day of luxury and opulence. Yet, in the briefest moments between the clinking of tools and the soft hum of the overhead lights, there was a dignity in his movements, a rhythm that spoke of patience, of skill, of a man used to being underestimated and choosing to respond not with words, but with quiet excellence. The laughter ebbed slightly as a customer leaned closer, whispering to a companion, "Who is this guy anyway?" Ethan, oblivious to the question, adjusted a bolt with a final twist, wiped his hands on a rag, and looked up just long enough to meet the gaze of Chloe Lancaster. For a fleeting second, a silent acknowledgement passed between them, unspoken, weighty, and full of unanticipated promise. Chloe's eyes softened, registering a respect that would grow steadily, imperceptibly, as she observed Ethan navigate the subtle insults, the sneers, the assumptions, without ever breaking his composure. The air felt heavier now, charged with a quiet anticipation, the kind that precedes something remarkable but as yet undefined. Every subtle movement of Ethan's hands, every precise turn of a wrench, seemed magnified in the stillness of the showroom, and though the world around him continued to chatter, he remained a center of calm, of focused intention, a man quietly reclaiming his dignity in the midst of mockery. Outside the glass doors, a delivery truck rumbled past, and for a brief instant, the sun caught the car's curves perfectly, reflecting a spectrum of light across Ethan's steady face. He exhaled slowly, his jaw unclenching as if releasing not just physical tension, but the weight of judgment around him. In that moment, the sound of laughter seemed distant, almost irrelevant, and Chloe Lancaster, standing at the periphery, recognized the quiet grace of a man who had weathered countless storms without ever raising his voice or compromising his character. Chloe Lancaster stepped closer to the sleek black sedan, her polished shoes tapping lightly against the tile floor, a quiet rhythm that matched the subdued tension in the showroom. She observed Ethan Harper methodically checking the brake calipers, his hands steady despite the eyes upon him, his sleeves rolled up just enough to reveal forearms that had become lean and strong from years of precise work. The chatter around them seemed to fade, a soft hum at the edge of awareness, as if the room itself recognized the dignity in his silence. Customers shuffled, some leaning forward in curiosity, others retreating slightly, unsure why the air felt different, charged with quiet determination. Ethan adjusted a torque wrench with care, the metallic click echoing faintly under the fluorescent lights, and without looking up, he said softly, "These bolts need even pressure, otherwise the wheel will wear unevenly." His voice was low, measured, not loud, yet it carried with a weight that drew attention without demanding it. Chloe found herself nodding. Imperceptibly, acknowledging not just the correctness of his statement, but the patience and knowledge behind it. The sales associate who had mocked him earlier whispered something to a colleague, and a brief ripple of doubt passed across the showroom floor, unspoken yet palpable. Ethan continued, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead, eyes flicking briefly to ensure the wheel was aligned properly, the hubcap fitting perfectly over the lug nuts. The subtle scent of motor oil mixed with polished leather, a grounded, familiar aroma that contrasted with the cold sophistication of the dealership, and Chloe felt a stirring of respect for the man who worked so silently, so effectively, in an environment designed to make him feel small. Outside, the sunlight reflected off the glass doors, casting long lines of light across the showroom, illuminating the dust motes that floated lazily in the warm air, unnoticed by most, but not by her. She observed Ethan's calm focus, the way he moved from tire to tire, each motion deliberate, each decision precise, without need for acknowledgement or applause. It was in this quiet, in this unassuming mastery of craft, that Chloe began to see the contrast between appearance and substance, between privilege and character, and it made her chest tighten slightly with admiration. Ethan lifted a panel, adjusted the brake fluid reservoir, and replaced a small component with exact care, checking and double-checking without the need for anyone to notice. His movements were a lesson in quiet resilience, a demonstration that dignity does not require loud protest. The murmurs of the other customers dimmed further, and Chloe took a small step closer, her gaze lingering on the lines of concentration etched across Ethan's face, the gentle way his fingers handled the tools, the unspoken commitment to excellence in every gesture. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting, watching, yet nothing dramatic occurred, nothing overtly confrontational, only the measured grace of a man doing his work, asserting value not through words but through action, in a world quick to underestimate him. Chloe felt a subtle shift within herself, an awareness of how easily the superficial judgments of others could obscure the true worth of a person, and she realized that this quiet mechanic, working in the midst of judgment and laughter, embodied a kind of courage and patience that deserved recognition far beyond the boundaries of the showroom. Ethan finally straightened, shoulders slightly relaxed, and wiped his hands on a rag, leaving a faint smudge on the pristine floor, a silent mark of effort and skill. Chloe's eyes met his briefly, and in that instant, unspoken understanding passed between them, a recognition of integrity and strength that would ripple through the moments to come, quietly reshaping the energy of the room and the perception of those who had come to witness, judge, and now, perhaps, to learn from the dignity of a man who had nothing to prove yet everything to show. The soft chime of the showroom door signaled the arrival of a new customer, yet Ethan Harper did not lift his gaze from the car in front of him. The customer, a sharply dressed man with a perfectly pressed suit and a faint scent of expensive cologne, glanced at Ethan with thinly veiled amusement. Beside him, a young woman with chestnut hair tucked neatly behind her ears followed, her eyes scanning the room with quiet curiosity. Chloe Lancaster adjusted the strap of her bag, remaining just far enough away to observe without intrusion. Ethan rotated the wrench carefully, listening to the subtle hum of the tires and the gentle clicks of the suspension settling into place. A sales associate stepped closer, leaning slightly toward the suited man, whispering words meant to belittle, but Ethan did not react. His calm, deliberate actions created a counterpoint to the murmurs around him, a rhythm of competence that was hard to ignore. The woman, Chloe, drew a small breath, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly as she watched the precision in Ethan's movements, the way his hands held the tools with quiet confidence, the gentle method in which he checked each component twice to ensure accuracy. She noticed how he paused for a moment, wiped his forehead, and then gave the final adjustment, the car now perfectly aligned under his care. The showroom lights glinted off the polished surfaces, casting reflections that danced across Ethan's focused face and the smooth curves of the vehicle. Outside, sunlight streamed through the glass panes, illuminating the dust in the air and the faint sheen of sweat on his brow, yet he seemed entirely composed, as if the world's judgments had no weight against the certainty of his work. Chloe's eyes followed every subtle motion, recognizing the discipline and patience that had been honed over years of effort, and she felt a subtle shift inside her, a growing awareness that this man's worth could not be measured by the opinions of those around him. A soft murmur rose from a few bystanders, curiosity edging out their amusement as they leaned closer to watch the quiet spectacle unfold. Ethan stood, straightened his shoulders, and inspected his work one last time, his movements fluid and unhurried, each gesture deliberate and full of understated mastery. Chloe stepped slightly forward, not to interrupt, but to allow her presence to acknowledge his work, her gaze meeting his for a brief, silent moment of recognition. The noise of the showroom seemed to fade behind them, the voices of the mocking salespeople reduced to background static, while the unspoken respect between the two of them became a silent signal, a quiet validation of skill, integrity, and character. The sunlight caught a glint in Ethan's eyes as he returned the tools to their place, each motion carrying the weight of quiet dignity, and Chloe's lips curved slightly, a half-smile born not from amusement but from admiration, a recognition of the strength in patience and the power in silent perseverance. Around them, the showroom's energy subtly shifted, the laughter and whispered judgments ebbing in the face of such composed mastery, leaving a room more attentive, more reflective, and more aware of the quiet heroism in ordinary acts performed with grace and care. The soft whir of the air conditioning and the faint clinking of tools being returned to their places filled the showroom as Ethan Harper straightened from his work, his hands resting lightly on the hood of the car. Chloe Lancaster remained at a respectful distance, her gray eyes following each deliberate movement, noticing the subtle way he adjusted his stance, the way his feet shifted slightly to maintain balance on the smooth tile floor. A faint smile tugged at her lips as she observed the quiet confidence that seemed to radiate from him without a single word spoken. Around them, the murmurs of the previous moments had faded, replaced by a hushed curiosity as other customers and staff sensed the shift in atmosphere, though they did not yet understand what had caused it. Ethan reached into his toolbox and selected a torque wrench, checking the calibration with careful precision, his hands steady despite the scrutiny. Each motion, each adjustment, spoke of years of experience, of a life lived in careful attention to detail, a man who had learned to let his work speak for him. Chloe took a slow step closer, her attention caught by the faint gleam in his eyes as he completed the final checks, the sunlight streaming through the large glass panels above casting long reflections across the polished surfaces of the showroom. Outside, the palm trees swayed gently in the afternoon breeze, the golden light illuminating the edges of the luxury vehicles in a way that made the shadows dance across the tile, but inside, the focus remained on Ethan, who did not notice the world outside, absorbed entirely in the task at hand. A child wandered past the edge of the showroom, clutching a toy car, and for a brief moment paused to watch the man with the grease-stained hands, sensing perhaps that there was more in him than the uniformity of the luxury setting suggested. Ethan carefully closed the hood, his fingers brushing lightly across the polished surface, ensuring nothing was out of place, a subtle act of pride in his work that went unnoticed by most but not by Chloe. Her eyes followed the lines of his posture, the gentle movements of his shoulders, the way he adjusted his coveralls and wiped a streak of oil from his hands, and she felt a quiet admiration rising, an acknowledgement of the dignity that could not be measured by status or wealth. The salespeople exchanged glances, their earlier amusement tempered now with a hint of respect or at least recognition that the man they had mocked was quietly commanding attention by virtue of his skill and composure. Ethan stepped back, surveying the vehicle one last time, and then straightened fully, exhaling slowly, a gesture that seemed to release not only physical tension but the invisible weight of judgment that had hovered over him since his arrival. Chloe, taking another step forward, felt an inexplicable pull toward the calm strength he exuded, a silent assurance that he was a man of principle, and the quiet gravity of his presence began to draw the attention of those around them without any effort or showmanship. The room, previously filled with laughter and whispers, had settled into an almost sacred hush, a collective breath held in recognition of the quiet mastery, patience, and integrity that Ethan Harper displayed with each deliberate movement, proving that true strength was often invisible, measured not by the noise of the world but by the steadiness of one man's character amidst it. The subtle hum of conversation shifted as a luxury sedan pulled slowly into the service bay, and Ethan Harper remained composed, his hands resting lightly on the engine cover, inspecting the vehicle one more time before turning to gather his tools. Chloe Lancaster moved closer, her eyes fixed on the calm determination that emanated from him, the quiet assurance in every measured movement. A client, dressed in a designer suit, approached with a faint smirk, perhaps expecting missteps or fumbling hands, but Ethan remained unshaken, responding with soft, deliberate motions as he prepared the diagnostic device to check the car's electronic systems. Each click and beep resonated in the showroom, filling the space with a rhythm that was methodical, almost meditative, contrasting sharply with the superficial chatter of the other customers. Chloe's attention lingered on the way Ethan's fingers deftly handled the tools, the precision of his movements, and the patience he maintained even as the room's focus subtly shifted toward him. He adjusted a cable with meticulous care, ensuring every connection was secure, and wiped his hands on a rag with gentle deliberation, the faint smell of motor oil mingling with the air-conditioned scent of leather and polished metal. A child walked past, glancing curiously at the mechanic, and for a moment, Chloe noticed how his presence commanded attention without any showmanship, simply through quiet competence and integrity. Ethan straightened, shoulders relaxed but poised, and observed the vehicle's dashboard, reading each gauge with practiced ease, making minor adjustments that no casual observer would notice but which ensured the car functioned flawlessly. The soft sunlight streaming through the large windows cast long lines across the floor, reflecting off the sedan's glossy paint, illuminating dust particles suspended in the air, and highlighting the steady rhythm of his work. Chloe took a careful step closer, recognizing the patience and care that underlined each movement, the humility and skill that coexisted in a man who had endured judgment and amusement yet responded only with mastery and composure. The murmurs that had circulated moments earlier had quieted, replaced by a subtle reverence as the bystanders observed Ethan's dedication, his quiet strength manifesting not through words or bravado, but through the seamless execution of his craft. Ethan rotated a knob, checked a sensor, and adjusted a hose, movements fluid and precise, each action speaking volumes of experience, diligence, and respect for the work itself. Chloe felt a quiet admiration rise within her, a recognition of the character and quiet resilience that shone through his actions, and a sense of anticipation lingered in the air, unspoken but palpable. Around them, the showroom seemed to pause, the ambient sounds of footsteps and conversation fading into near silence as Ethan completed his inspection, his calm focus and steady hands transforming a routine task into a demonstration of quiet dignity. Finally, he replaced the last tool in its spot, straightened fully, and exhaled softly, a gesture of completion and composure that drew Chloe's gaze for a long, lingering moment. The room remained hushed, and in that shared silence, the first hints of unspoken respect and recognition formed between them, a subtle yet profound shift in the energy of the space, the quiet assertion of integrity and skill speaking louder than any words could. Chloe Lancaster took a slow step closer, her gaze tracing the subtle movements of Ethan Harper as he carefully retrieved a small diagnostic tool from his kit. The soft click of the case opening echoed faintly across the polished showroom floor, blending with the distant hum of the air conditioning and the occasional murmur of a curious onlooker. Ethan did not glance up, his attention entirely absorbed in connecting the tool to the car's onboard system, fingers steady and deliberate, each motion precise and unhurried. Chloe's eyes softened as she noted the quiet concentration etched across his face, the way he adjusted his stance, the gentle rise and fall of his shoulders as he focused on the task at hand. The sun streaming through the large windows caught the edges of the sedan, highlighting the sheen of the paint and the smooth lines of its body, yet all her attention remained fixed on the man who had transformed the space through quiet competence alone. A faint breeze drifted in through the slightly open door, carrying the scent of warm asphalt and palm trees, mingling with the subtle aroma of motor oil and leather inside the showroom, creating a sensory frame that felt almost cinematic in its simplicity. Ethan checked a sensor, noted a small reading on the display, and adjusted the calibration carefully, his hands moving with practiced ease. A rhythm that spoke of years of experience and attention to detail. Chloe's gaze lingered on the soft creases around his eyes, the calm determination in his expression, recognizing the dignity he carried in every action, the humility that allowed him to remain composed despite the judgment and whispers around him. The customers nearby, initially drawn by curiosity, shifted their attention as the quiet authority of his skill became evident, subtle nods, slight pauses, and unspoken acknowledgement passed among them, the laughter and mocking having faded into near silence. Ethan lifted the hood again, checking the fluid levels and ensuring the engine components were in proper order, movements flowing seamlessly, neither rushed nor hesitant, each step a silent declaration of mastery. Chloe's lips curved into a faint, approving smile as she observed the balance of competence and calm, the way he held himself with quiet confidence, commanding attention without words, without drama. The showroom lights reflected softly across the hood, casting gentle glints on Ethan's hands as he finished his work, placing the tools back into the case with deliberate care, the subtle clatter signaling the end of the immediate task yet leaving a lasting impression. Chloe felt a warmth rise inside her, a recognition of character, integrity, and skill, unspoken yet powerful, as she stepped closer, just enough to be part of the shared space, bearing witness to quiet excellence. Ethan straightened fully, exhaled softly, and surveyed the car one last time, the subtle movements of his shoulders and the tilt of his head signaling completion and satisfaction. The atmosphere in the showroom had shifted imperceptibly, the energy now centered on respect and attention rather than judgment and mockery. Chloe, standing nearby, absorbed every nuance, every small gesture, understanding that in this quiet display of mastery and patience, she had witnessed a depth of character that spoke louder than any words could convey, a moment of grace and dignity unfolding in the midst of ordinary surroundings. Chloe Lancaster took a careful step forward, her heels making barely a sound against the polished tile, and Ethan Harper did not flinch or look up, absorbed entirely in organizing his tools with deliberate precision. The showroom seemed to hold its breath, the soft hum of the air conditioning the only audible background noise as he placed each wrench and socket back into the tray, checking that each one was aligned perfectly. Chloe's eyes lingered on the subtle details, the slight crease in his brow as he measured the alignment one final time, the way his hands moved with quiet confidence, and the calm steadiness of his posture that spoke of experience, resilience, and patience. A faint breeze drifted through the open door, carrying the scent of warm asphalt and distant ocean, blending with the rich aroma of leather and metal, grounding the space in a mixture of luxury and everyday life. Ethan picked up a soft cloth and carefully wiped a smudge from the hood, the gesture small but deliberate, an unspoken assertion of pride in his work and respect for the space around him. Chloe stepped closer again, drawn by the composure and focus he exhibited, a recognition forming that this was not a man who sought attention or validation, but whose quiet excellence naturally demanded it. The soft clicking of the tools and the faint beep of the diagnostic display punctuated the air, creating a rhythm that was almost hypnotic, inviting Chloe and the nearby observers to watch without distraction, to take in the precision and care with which he operated. She noticed the subtle confidence in the way he shifted his weight, the slight nod as he finished his final checks, a gentle exhale of satisfaction that was both private and deeply expressive, a testament to his skill and his dignity. Around them, the showroom had grown quiet, the chatter of other customers and the whispers of the staff had subsided, replaced by a hushed acknowledgement of a man who moved through the space with calm authority, commanding attention without speaking a word. Chloe's gaze met his briefly, a silent recognition passing between them, charged with respect and curiosity, a quiet understanding of character and integrity that words could not convey. Ethan replaced the last tool in its designated spot and closed the case with a soft click, straightened fully, and allowed himself a moment to survey the car once more, ensuring every detail was exactly as it should be. The sunlight streaming through the large windows reflected off the polished surfaces, illuminating Ethan's steady hands and focused expression, and Chloe felt a subtle warmth, an unspoken admiration for the grace and quiet determination that had transformed the ordinary task into a display of understated mastery. In that moment, the showroom seemed suspended, the air heavy with unspoken recognition. And Chloe realized that the man before her had not only completed his work with excellence but had done so in a way that subtly shifted the perception of everyone present, a quiet affirmation that true strength and dignity could exist without drama, without spectacle, and yet still leave an unforgettable impression. The gentle hum of the air conditioning and the soft click of the tools being put away filled the showroom with a calm rhythm, drawing Chloe Lancaster's eyes repeatedly toward Ethan Harper, who moved with quiet precision and unhurried focus. He straightened, shoulders relaxed, glancing briefly at the car one last time, ensuring every detail met his exacting standards, yet never allowing the air around him to feel tense or expectant. Chloe stepped slightly closer, her gaze following the subtle movements of his hands, the careful adjustment of the hood latch, the way he methodically wiped down each polished surface before setting the rag aside. The sun outside poured through the tall glass panes, scattering warm streaks of light across the floor and vehicles, highlighting the neat alignment of Ethan's tools and the gentle care evident in each movement. Customers and staff who had lingered earlier shifted their attention subtly, noticing the quiet authority he held, the way he commanded respect without a single word, the dignity embedded in every deliberate gesture. Ethan adjusted his coveralls, wiped his hands one final time, and inhaled slowly, as if savoring the completion of his work while maintaining a steady calm that did not seek acknowledgement. Chloe felt a stirring within her, a recognition of character and integrity that went beyond surface appearances, noticing the steadiness in his posture, the patience in his motions, and the unspoken pride in his competence. The showroom, once filled with whispers and smirks, had settled into a near silence, the energy subtly shifted, the onlookers now quietly attentive, captivated by the understated mastery and composure of a man who had been underestimated at first glance. Ethan took a moment to survey the space, his eyes scanning the gleaming vehicles and the polished floors, yet always returning to the simple act of finishing his tasks with care and precision. Chloe's steps were measured as she moved closer, noting the faint glint of sunlight on his grease-stained hands, the subtle determination in his expression, and the quiet confidence that did not boast but invited respect. The air seemed to thrum softly, a silent acknowledgement of patience, integrity, and diligence in the midst of a world that often celebrated flash over substance. Ethan replaced the last tool in its compartment, the soft click punctuating the moment, and straightened fully, taking in the showroom with a calm, discerning gaze, each breath deliberate, each movement composed. Chloe's eyes met his for a brief instant, a silent recognition of effort, skill, and quiet courage passing between them, unspoken yet unmistakable, a connection formed not by words but by the weight of presence, the grace of integrity, and the subtle proof that true value often revealed itself in the calm, steadfast actions of those who needed no audience to validate their worth. In that suspended, hushed space, the recognition of dignity and mastery settled, a quiet respect spreading imperceptibly among all who had witnessed it, and Chloe knew that something significant had shifted, quietly, powerfully, without a single utterance, leaving an indelible impression of character, patience, and understated excellence. Chloe Lancaster took a hesitant step forward, and for the first time, a faint smile touched her lips as she allowed herself to acknowledge Ethan Harper directly, her gray eyes holding a quiet admiration that had been building since she first arrived. Ethan looked up, his gaze meeting hers with calm steadiness, no trace of pride or arrogance, only the subtle recognition that his diligence, patience, and integrity had been observed and valued. The showroom, once filled with murmurs and soft laughter, had settled into a hushed stillness, every person present now caught in the quiet gravity of the moment, noticing for the first time the depth of skill and character displayed by a man they had initially underestimated. Ethan set down his final tool, wiped his hands carefully, and straightened fully, the sunlight streaming through the expansive windows casting a golden glow over the polished vehicles and highlighting the steady lines of his posture. Chloe's steps drew her closer until she was near enough to bridge the unspoken distance, her presence gentle, respectful, and intentional. She extended a hand, lightly brushing a strand of chestnut hair from her face, and Ethan offered a subtle nod of acknowledgement, the silent exchange carrying more weight than words could convey. Around them, the subtle shift in energy was palpable, the staff and customers paused in quiet observation, some exchanging glances that acknowledged the unexpected turn. From judgment to reverence. Chloe took a breath and spoke softly, her voice steady yet filled with warmth, recognizing not only the completion of the work but the patience, care, and dignity that Ethan had brought to every action. Ethan responded with a calm, measured voice, expressing quiet humility and gratitude, the tone reflecting the understated strength of a man accustomed to being overlooked yet unwavering in his commitment to excellence. The afternoon sun bathed the showroom in soft golden light, reflecting off chrome, leather, and polished paint, creating a serene ambience that framed the moment of connection. Chloe's expression softened further as she stepped a little closer, allowing her presence to communicate the respect and recognition she felt, and in return, Ethan's composed demeanor seemed to absorb the attention without demanding it, radiating quiet dignity. The hum of the air conditioning, the faint footsteps of onlookers, and the occasional whisper of admiration became a backdrop to the unspoken acknowledgement forming between them, a shared understanding of integrity, skill, and quiet resilience. In that suspended, fleeting space, Chloe reached out gently, a gesture of recognition and compassion, and Ethan allowed the moment to settle between them, a testament to patience, grace, and the unspoken power of quiet strength. The showroom, now still and reflective, seemed to acknowledge the shift, the subtle transformation of perception from mockery to respect, and in that moment, Ethan Harper's steadfast character and Chloe Lancaster's recognition converged, creating a profound, silent affirmation that dignity, perseverance, and genuine care leave an enduring impact, a quiet triumph witnessed without fanfare, without spectacle, but with undeniable resonance.